Hey everybody, welcome back to another segment of A Taste of Manga. Now tonight is something that I don't really like to do all of the time, but I'm talking about one that I don't have in physical print. I was gonna pick this up on Amazon, but it is currently out of stock. I did find a copy on Right Stuff, but I knew that wasn't necessarily going to ship in time for when I wanted to discuss it. Um, but I am very glad that I read it online, and that is Blood on the Tracks by Shuzo Oshimi. I've talked about this mangaka a lot on this channel. I would consider him one of my favorites, if not my number one. If you've never heard of him before, you might have heard of Aku no Hana, aka Flowers of Evil, or Happiness, or Inside Mari. Several noteworthy series of Flowers of Evil, one of my favorite manga of all time. Happiness I haven't completed, but I think it would be up there. It's another amazing work by him. And I think he has incredible art and unique storytelling, unique sort of in the sense that I always describe him as someone that likes to sort of make you feel uncomfortable. And he likes to sort of play with your sense of uncomfortability. And he has like some tropes that he likes to tie into a lot of his works, having grown up in Gunma, I believe it's called, prefecture in Japan, kind of like out in the sticks. His stories are relatively set in like rural areas, and it's very often the characters have this sense of like wanting to escape or getting tired of like mundane life. And this Blood on the Tracks is sort of similar in the sense that I believe it does take place in Gunma Prefecture. Again, for this, I just read Volume 1, so this is going to be, I believe, the first 7 or 8 chapters. It was kind of hard to tell where Volume 1 exactly ended on the site that I read this on. So I went ahead and did the first 8 chapters. So that might, in fact, be Volume 1, Volume 2, Chapter 1 as well, but so the first 8 chapters of Blood on the Tracks were very entertaining. Like I said, it takes place in this rural Gunma prefecture. We have our main character named Seiichi, who is this 8th grade kid, and he has the whole underlying thing. Not a ton actually happened, except toward the end of this first volume. Because it's essentially this awkward story of this kid with this like really overprotective mom. Well, overprotective sort of in the sense of like the public, I guess. He doesn't really feel like his mom is that bad. They have this like loving relationship. She is pretty creepy as hell, and their relationship is sort of odd. She always has this weird expression on her face. She has this sort of like half smile most of the time. And while she has like a seemingly normal life, like this marriage and a son and this family, you just get the vibe that something is off about Seiichi's mom. And I think he sort of knows a little bit about that too. But they have this sort of like really mundane life where Seiichi's just a kid that sort of wants, to go to school, be a normal kid. There's this girl that he likes in his class who's seemingly starting to notice him, and he's kind of liking that. But that's at least he hopes that she's starting to notice him. He's very timid. He's pretty shy. He's easily bullied by people around him. He's not very assertive. People around him tend to sort of like pick on him a little bit and then sort of play it off as a joke, including his cousin who comes to his house, or is starting to come to his house rather often. It's not really clear how good this family relationship is, because you have sort of the internal family of Seiichi, his dad, who works pretty often and goes out after work with his bosses and stuff like that, and then you have the mom. And the mom and Seiichi are together the most often, for sure. The dad seems like, not like a deadbeat dad or anything like that, but he seems rather busy. And when he's sort of out, Seiichi's mom sort of shifts her attention toward Seiichi. And it's not really like a sexual thing. At least I hope we don't go down that path. But it is a lot of tension. Like, it's a lot of like awkward staring. It's a lot of like moments where she seems like she's doing something loving, but it's just sort of like creepy. And there's a scene. Seiichi has this dream from when he was a kid about when him and his mom found this dead cat, and he thought that the cat was sleeping. He goes to touch it. Turns out it's ice cold and a dead cat. And the mom goes to touch it too, and she says something to him along the lines of like, "Oh, I wonder why it's dead." And we don't really get an actual explanation as to why it's dead. And he remembers this in a dream, and he's sort of starting to like figure out how fucking weird that sort of like reaction to this would have been. But we don't know if she did something to the cat or whatever. The cat comes up a lot in this first volume. Like, they show just the picture of the dead cat over and over again. But this manga is a lot of awkward moments in between these two characters who, aren't like the mom is creepy, and I mean, because it is this suspense sort of manga, you're led to believe that she's sort of like up to no good for a good portion of it, when in reality, in my personal life, I've seen mothers that are even more sort of like hoverboard parents than this mom. I would say growing up, my parents were pretty like strict on me and were pretty like watchful of like actions that I did. Not necessarily to this degree. Like, the mom in this manga, literally, like, the kids, like, when the kid went to preschool, she was literally in the back of the room, which I've heard from relatives that have taught and friends that have taught and stuff like that, that sometimes you'll get a helicopter parent like that. So I don't think that's, while it's not necessarily normal or probably very good for your kid, I think it's believable. And it's just sort of like, I got the sense for a lot of this volume that she was just a slightly overprotective mom, as a lot of people led her to believe. However, without spoiling too much, toward the end of this, we go on this family trip with this cousin of Seiichi that he doesn't really like, who's kind of a jerk and is kind of like plays all Seiichi's video games and like hangs out with him, but he really doesn't like having this cousin around. His cousin's kind of a bully. He's kind of a jerk. He even outwardly says, like, your mom, is very overprotective. This is the only time that Seiichi is like, hey, please don't say stuff about my mom. And he sort of like has this minor freak out about it, and the cousin sort of like backs off of it, at least until they go on this trip. And they go on this trip, and it's sort of like out in the woods, and it's like this hiking thing. And, the shithead cousin is kind of all about, like, the dangerous parts of it. He likes climbing on the rocks and stuff like that, and hanging out by the cliffs. Seiichi's not really as into that. So it's this awkward sense of him he's growing up as a young as an 8th grade boy, probably wanting to be more independent, but still having a very close, loving relationship with this sort of creepy mom, and the rest of the world sort of around him seeing like what that is and truly judging him for that. And then toward the climax of this first volume, the mom partakes in an action that definitely fixes your sort of perspective on her. And I'm not going to say specifically what it is, but I didn't see it coming as fast as it did. She does something that really makes you really think that she's sort of off the deep end with this. And I'm very curious as to how Seiichi's going to react. But yeah, it was very, very entertaining. It does have that same sense, whereas like in Flowers of Evil and in Happiness, where you get that Oshimi uncomfortableness and that sort of like challenging what it is to sort of be like growing up like adolescent. Like, you're trying to find stuff out about yourself, and you have all these sort of confusing messages that other people can be sending you and society can be sending you. And I'm sure as an 8th grade boy, like, his mom behaving like this is probably not very good for Seiichi's development. It's probably very confusing, and I'm not even like really. I'm no shrink. I'm no psychiatrist or anything. But she gets very very close with him and is very very touchy feely, and it's awkward. And he isn't 100% into it, but he's not very assertive against her. So I think he could end up with some very like confused feelings potentially, especially with the action that she took toward the end of Volume 1. Of course, this is Shuzo Oshimi. He's got fantastic art. I love how this manga looks. You just get these creepy scenes with characters. I love how he does hair. I've always said that. I love his character designs for people. You can kind of tell an Oshimi work if you just saw some of its panels. And in a good way. It's not like, oh, everything looks the same. I think each of his manga, like the characters, you could tell that they're by him, but they look relatively unique in the environment that they are. And this one certainly went for more creepy, more, I would say, Junji Ito-esque at some scenes. And it genuinely gives a creepy feeling, and I would certainly recommend it if you are a fan of any of this guy's previous works. And even if not at all, this might be an okay one to start with. Again, I've only read Volume 1, or the first, well, maybe a little bit of Volume 2, read the first 8 chapters. And I do think it's very good. If you want to pick it up, though, it is on back order on Amazon currently as the time of this recording, but it is available on Right Stuff. But I recommend it to read it wherever you would like to. If you have read Blood on the Tracks, let me know what you thought of it down below. If you read any other Oshimi work, please let me know your thoughts about that too. Still, my favorite one to this day is Flowers of Evils, and if that one is a completed story. So if you want something that's not currently being written, something that has this like sort of like wrapped up story to it, I highly recommend Flowers of Evil. It's a very quick read, and it is very entertaining. And I have pretty high expectations for Blood on the Tracks, and so far, it is meeting those expectations. It is really good. So yeah, let me know what you guys thought of this manga down below. If you like what I'm doing here, please consider hitting that subscribe button. There's also a Patreon link in the description box if you would like to support the channel that way. Thank you to all of my patrons, Lax, Nia, Warp, and J-Chip, specifically J-Chip in this video because this was a manga recommendation that he had for me for this month, and I'm so glad that he did because this was a really cool read. Thank you guys so much for watching. It means a lot to me. My name is Miasma, and I'll see you next time.